Well, hello to everybody. It's another opportunity for us all to get together and have some phenomenal dialogue. Today we have a panel that is like none other with the leaders who are making a difference now, who are going to make a difference in the future. And I think it's so critical for us to understand that as we are in this space, we have to understand when it's time to lead, when it's time to follow, and when it's time to get out of the way. Well, the panel we have today are not sitting on the sideline. And the opportunity for us today is to look at how we come together. How do we address these issues that are out here that continue to plague our community? While COVID-19 is one of the greatest challenges, if not the greatest challenge of our lifetime, of the current lifetime, and we know we've been through many battles all through the years and the centuries. But for modern time, this battle that we're faced with is like none other. So I want to start by saying to you, I'm, of course, Thomas Dortch, the chairman and founder of the National Black College Alumni Hall of Fame Foundation. I want to say to all of us, we want you to shelter in place. We want you to be safe and make sure your loved ones are safe. We are not invincible. And our family members and our community, those who have preconditions, have been the ones who have been hardest hit. We also see the challenges that are going on now with the fact that over 50% of all of the people who died from this COVID-19 pandemic have been African American. And even here in Georgia, in Atlanta, where I'm based, in Georgia, almost 80% of those who have been hospitalized are African Americans. And so this thing is not gone, and it's not going away for some time. This past weekend, people had fun going out for Memorial Day. Who knows how many infections were spreaded. So what I want us to do is use common sense. The other thing that we have to understand, while we are preoccupied with COVID-19, we cannot stop living. Right before us is the census, and we've got to make sure that we are accurately counted with the census, because the census, again, determines where hundreds of billions of dollars will go into communities, hundreds of billions of dollars that make a difference, and whether they're going to go into our school systems or go into our hospitals and all. So we've got to make sure we get an accurate count in the census. They are the most pressing issue, and I know we all hear it over and over again every time a major election comes around. This election is more critical than any before. Well, I keep saying that with many others, and every time we turn, it gets even more critical. So it's important for us to make sure we maximize our participation in the electoral process. Civic engagement is a responsibility, not only an opportunity and not only a right, but we've got to make sure we're there. To my young brothers and sisters who are listening, I know there are different debates and conversations and people are in your ears. Only thing I ask you to do is use common sense and to make sure you decide what is in the best interest, one, for you, but what is in the best interest for your family and your loved ones in the community where you exist. What's in the best interest for historically Black colleges and universities and that way forward that we're going to have. So please, again, I know there are those who are saying that this election doesn't matter. There are those who are saying that we're being taken for granted. Well, for the last 3.5 years, not only have we been taken for granted, we've been dismissed. And so you've got to decide yourselves. You know, again, if you don't vote, you don't count. And I know a lot of my young leaders say, well, I don't want to hear about what they did before, but I can tell you, had it not been for the valiant and the hardworking African-American men and women who sacrificed to ensure that those of us in my generation could be where we are, we must continue to sacrifice to make sure that future generations are going to be able to succeed. I know those in my generation have failed in many ways not to live up to making sure that the next generation was better than what we had. There are those of us still out here, still working to try and make sure that it does happen. But my young brothers and sisters, you know, as Mary Pat and others you'll hear from today, I've had the opportunity to serve in leadership roles for a long time. But I also understand it's important to know when it's time to lead, when it's time to follow, and when it's time to get out of the way. When I came on the scene as a young man, the age of about 18, and I went to the Fort Valley State University. The upperclassmen embraced me, and that's when we used to have demonstrations on campus to try and protest even stuff like the food is not good and early curfews for upperclassmen, women on campus. All of those things we protested. We even protested having professors we couldn't understand what they were teaching in our classroom. But the campus was a proving ground and a training ground for us for what we did when we got into the broader community. And we continued on. As student government president at Fort Valley State University, I registered 96% of all of the students to vote on my campus because we wanted to make sure we were counted. In a 57% Black county and a city that was almost 60% Black, African-American, there was only one African-American elected official. We changed the way things were done in Fort Valley. And I moved to Atlanta and went to Atlanta University, now Clark Atlanta University. Some of the giants like the late Maynard Jackson and Andrew Young and C.T. Vivian and Julian Bond and John Lewis and those who were part of SNCC, where students made a difference from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They made a difference. And so what I'm saying to all of you, you've got to make a difference. We believe in you, we trust you. There's wisdom in those elders in our village. I respect every one of them. If Dr. C.T. Vivian calls me at midnight, I'm there because we would not have a Voting Rights Act for him. We have to understand respect for those who came before us, but at the same time, you've got to make a difference. So my young brothers and sisters, it's okay to sit around and talk, but you've got to be action-oriented, as many of you are, and those on this call. And then the last that we know, while we look at all this violence in this nation, the issue with what happened in Brunswick, Georgia, what happened just in Minneapolis and all. Our voices cannot be just anger. We've got to make sure, as they said years ago, when John Lewis headed the Voter Education Project, hands that once picked cotton can now pick governors and presidents and senators and district attorneys. We've got to take that anger and make it work. We got to get these bad seeds out of office. And when we have police chiefs and those in elected office don't make a difference, we've got to make a difference. The murder for Arbery in Brunswick, the murder we saw on video in Minneapolis, the murders in Kentucky, we cannot stand by and be again on the sideline. But at the same time, my brothers and sisters, let's not condemn every law enforcement officer, because many of them are our brothers and sisters and uncles and aunts and grandparents who are trying to make a difference. We've got to get the bad seeds out, and we've got to hold people accountable. And so I say to each of you, be a change agent, make a difference. It's okay to talk, but talk is cheap if you don't take action. And you have a brain. You're some of the best and brightest in the world, not just in this nation. So don't let people who show up when it's time for the cameras to tell you what to do. And we got those in the entertainment industry and all who are making money for themselves. And then there's some great ones who are making a difference for all of us. You got to make a difference, and you got to decide between those who are serious and those who really have your welfare and your mothers and fathers and uncles and aunts and your sisters and brothers' welfare at hand, or rather than those who think it won't matter because I've got my millions no matter what they do. So we start this conversation with a phenomenal panel. And what I want to say to all of you, lead, follow, or get out of the way. And you've got some phenomenal people. I tell you, my leader, and when we look at historically Black colleges and universities, Dr. Kimbrough, you're my hero. Again, I'm happy to have my homeboy on here from Atlanta, but our HBCUs are facing challenges like never before, my brothers and sisters. What we do after this pandemic is going to determine what happens for us for higher education. And our colleges were having challenges before now. So I call on all alumni and students. We've got to be there. We got to stand up for these institutions. Had it not been for them, I wouldn't be where I am. 5 of my children, all of them went to HBCUs. And I made it clear, I will support HBCUs until the day I die. So with that, we're going to start this conversation with a phenomenal panel. But at the end of the day, my brothers and sisters, it's not what you say, It's what you do. Now, I'm proud to introduce this young brother. He's an Aggie. You know him as CDK. He's, again, at North Carolina A&T University. He's currently a multimedia journalism student there at Aggie Town. He has enjoyed being, again, in the Blue and Gold Marching Band. He hosts his own on-campus events and college events and parties throughout the country to bring people together for parties, real parties with a purpose. He was recently named the official host for the HBCU Pulse and was named the top HBCU host in America for HBCU Buzz. I'm gonna get out of your way and let me just simply say, CDK, it's your show.
How y'all doing today? First of all, I would like to say thank you for my introduction and thank you for allowing me to be the mediator for this beautiful panel today. We're gonna have a great time. So first of all, I would like to tell y'all that you can fill up that question and answer box at later on in the panel that we'll take your time to answer these questions that we have. And I'm about to go ahead and get right into it and introduce you to our panel. And right after I introduce you guys, I'm gonna just give y'all a few seconds to say anything that I might have missed because, you know what I'm saying, your biography can't tell you everything that y'all have done so far. Y'all are very active on campus and off campus in our communities. So like I said, once again, I'm Christian Cornegay, also known as CDK on the mic, radio personality. And today we're gonna talk about leadership. Leadership. We have queens on the panel today. We have a SGA president. We have a doctor. We have a president as far as Dillard University. We have a little bit of everybody today and talking from different perspectives. And we have a lot of topics to talk about. So I'm about to go ahead and introduce you to our panel. And as soon as I introduce you, like I said, once again, you can talk a little bit about yourself and then we're going to open the floor. So first off, I'm going to start with Mary Pat Hector. Mary Pat Hector, born in Atlanta, a recent graduate of Spelman College. At the age 12, she grew a community service project into a nonprofit, Youth in Action USA. By the age 19, she became the youngest woman and person of color to run for public office in the state of Georgia, defeated by only 22 votes. That's crazy. Mary Pat served as the National Youth Director of the National Action Network, one of the country's largest civil rights organizations. Mary Pat led and organized hunger strikes for students at HBCUs to end student hunger on college campuses, and she also organized rallies to end police violence in communities of college, and she developed youth entrepreneurship programs. I welcome to you, Ms. Mary Pat Hector. She also was awarded the $50,000 fellowship and her proudest accomplishment of becoming Fellow of Peace First for the national campaign called Think Twice, that educated youth on nonviolence and other crippling issues. I introduce to you Ms. Mary Pat Hector.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to say to the people, Ms. Mary?
I have nothing to say about myself. It's very, very weird to even hear someone talk about you. So thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it.
Well, next we have Alexander Lowe. Alexander Benjamin Lowe is a rising senior mathematics and computer science major at Fort Valley State University, currently serving as a Student Government Association president, a child of God, passionate about changing education and legislation and leadership. He is the CEO and founder of Education Resource, the HBCU Tutor. He has also grown to support the academic lives of the HBCU students. Long-term, he aspires to restructure the K-12 school system for students across America. I introduce to you Alexander Lowe.
Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to speak today, and I'm excited to be on this panel with everyone.
That's all you got for us, Mr. Alexander?
Yeah, I'm keeping it brief. You know, we'll dive into more later.
All right. Up next, we have Taylor Davis. Ms. Taylor Davis is a Howard University senior, all the way from Dallas, Texas, majoring in international business. Next fall, she has the amazing pleasure at serving as the 82nd Miss Howard University. All In is her title's platform, which she aims to inspire students at Howard University, as well as students in the DMV community, to live audaciously without fear and failure. Her long-term professional goal is to bring authenticity to representation and diversity to the entertainment industry. Last summer, she internship at the Uninterrupted LLC, where she was able to craft and pitch the original HBCU incentive to athletes' content and the brand partnership term. She also worked as Congressional Black Caucus intern with the specific and external affairs at membership service. Currently, she is interning at Apple as an editorial business video intern. Her mantra that she lives by every day is never let anyone count you out. I introduce you to Ms. Taylor Davis.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction. Just like everyone else, I don't have, too much to say about myself. Just glad to be here and glad to partake in this conversation.
Up next, we have another beautiful young lady, Ms. Tangela Mitchell. Ms. Tangela Mitchell is a published poet, journalist, performer. Tangela Mitchell is a 2020 graduate, political science major, Spanish and creative writing double minor at Spelman College from Fayetteville, North Carolina. She is very active on campus, serving as first-year class president, a 3-year Spelman College student ambassador, and a study abroad ambassador. Most recently, she served as Miss Spelman College for the 2019-2020 and is currently serving as Miss National Black College Alumni Hall of Fame for the 2019-2020 year. As Miss Hall of Fame, Tangela serves as ambassador and an organization advocate for HBCU students. In late 2019, she spearheaded the hometown tour where she visited local high schools in Fayetteville, North Carolina to talk to students about college readiness, HBCUs, and how to fund the college education. Tangela now pursues her Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing with concentration in poetry. I introduce you to Ms. Tangela Mitchell.
Hi, everyone. As the sentiments have been shared, I am just happy to be here. This is our third empowerment session, and I'm really excited for the student leadership focus of this one. So really be ready to get started with the conversations.
All righty. Last but not least, we have Dr. Walter M. Kimbrough. A native of Atlanta, Dr. Walter M. Kimbrough, a high school salutatorian and a student body president. Dr. Kimbrough went and earned degrees from University of Georgia, Miami University in Ohio, and a doctorate in higher education from Georgia State University. He enjoyed fulfilling careers in student affairs at Emory University, Georgia State University, Old Dominion University, Albany State University. In October 2004, at the age of 37, he was named the 12th president of Philander Smith College. In 2012, he became and is currently the 7th president of Dillard University in New Orleans, Louisiana. Kimbrough has been recognized for his research for writing HBCUs and African American men in college. I introduce you to Dr. Kimbrough.
All right, I'm glad to be here. I did have a quick question. I want to know where Mary Pat went to high school since she's from Atlanta.
I went to Green Forest. Are you familiar with Green Forest?
That's one of those new, is it outside 285?
It's a private school indicator.
See, you from Decatur then. She can't claim it.
I was born in Grady Memorial Hospital.
Okay. You got Grady. You're a Grady baby. Okay. All right. You get, okay. But I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
And now that we got that and we introduced you to our panel, let's go ahead and open up the floor. Now, this question is for everybody on the panel, and this is how I want to start this off. I want you to finish the phrase, a great leader is blank, blank, blank. This is open to anybody on the panel. Let's just go ahead and open up the floor.
All right, I'll jump in. I always think about leadership. There is a book by the late Manning Marable called Black Leadership, which I really encourage people to pick up and read. But basically, when he defines leadership, he says there's 3 parts. So you said blank, blank, blank. There are 3 parts of his definition. That they have an ability to understand their own times, which means you can't lead if you don't even really know what's going on. And particularly in this social media age and so much false information, a lot of times people think they know what they're talking about and they don't know. So you can't lead if you don't understand your own times. That's number 1. 2 then is that you're able to articulate the interests or perceived interests of groups. So then if you're the leader, you're able to effectively communicate what the group that you're representing, what their needs are. So an ability to communicate, I think, is very important today for leadership. So you have to understand what's going on. You have to be able to articulate that. And then the final point then is that you're able to articulate vehicles to achieve effective change, which means leadership is more than just pointing out all the problems. What can you create to do something about the issue? If you don't do anything, you aren't leading. So I think Manning Marable's definition to me is very succinct because it gives you the steps. Know what's going on, be able to articulate that, and then do something about it. So for me, that's what leadership is.
I'll step in next, or
That's okay. You can go.
no, you totally got it, Taylor.
Okay. I was going to say that I think that a leader is influential, not powerful. So I think that oftentimes a lot of people find themselves in leadership positions, and it's kind of like the line kind of gets blurred between respect and like fear, or just kind of that want for authority. So I think it really starts with kind of evaluating what type of impact you want to leave on other people. Are you in this position because you want to see a change, you want to bring about some type of change, or because you just want authority over people? And I think that that's really what separates like an effective leader, or what distinguishes an effective leader. What is your priority? Do you want to leave a long-lasting impact on other people that it's positive, or are you really doing this to kind of boost your own ego? So I think definitely wanting to be an influential force and guide people, not just give people directives, but you're understanding and you're guiding people. I think that's what, for me, all the people I've encountered who I genuinely see as like really influential and just successful leaders, I think that they know how to influence instead of just kind of being this authoritative figure.
I'll step in next. I would say that a good leader is passionate, inspiring, and innovative. And on the passionate side, I think that some leaders get too caught up in the challenge of everything that's going on. And while the situations that they typically are facing are very challenging, I think it's very important to remember why you're doing what you're doing, and the whole aspect is typically helping people or to reach a common goal. And if you're dispassionate, a lot of times you lose other people, and that ties into the next point of being inspiring. You know, a lot of people think just doing stuff is the sake of leadership. Anybody can do things, but getting other people to work together to do things as a group is a further level of a leader, as you inspire others to, be more than themselves or to work towards a larger goal. And the last thing is innovative, because I've seen a lot of people lead people the same ways that they've used in the past. And one thing I think we're very aware of is that the world that we live in is constantly changing. We're getting new technology, new challenges are proposing themselves. And if you can't change with the times, you can be leading your own people to destruction.
I feel like a leader is selfless. Dr. Martin Luther King talked briefly about the drum major instinct, where, there are people who desire to be out in the front, desire to be seen, desire to receive accolades. But I feel like a real leader doesn't need those things to fulfill their purpose. And I believe that they're selfless in their giving, and doesn't really think about what they'll receive from that giving. And I believe a true leader also knows when to share the spotlight. Oftentimes, a lot of our leaders are so afraid to give other people an opportunity that they end up blocking their own blessings. And I feel that a true leader is someone who is selfless in giving other people an opportunity to lead.
Well, I would say I'm kind of stuck between two words. So when I think of a leader, I believe a leader is unyielding in a lot of ways, but in the same respect, they're flexible in other ways. So what really attracts people to your message or, to your movement is the fact that you are so adamant about it. You refuse to back down about something. And people want to see that in their leader, that regardless of circumstance, regardless of whatever hardships might come, I am unmoving, I am unmovable, and I'm solid, and I'm planted in our ultimate goal. But at the same time, a leader is flexible, because we have in our minds how we want things to look, how we want, whether it's a reign, if we're talking about queendom, or, whatever the goal of the leader is, we have an idea of how we want it to manifest itself. And life happens, and things change, and plans have to be rearranged. And a leader has to be resilient enough and flexible enough to be attached to the goal rather than the path. So while how we get there might look different than what I thought it would, we will get there. And you have to be quick thinking on your feet and flexible to make those types of effective changes. So unyielding, but flexible.
A lot of you spoke on the topic of influence. So influence, as far as when you have a title, is not what you do with the title. It's how you do it more so. So let's talk about influence as well. Let's talk about you guys weren't always in the position to have a title. So before you got in that position to have a title, what type of influence did you have over your HBCU, and how did you gain that trust? So when you got in the position, you already had that trust built up with your following as far as your students.
I can speak first on this one. So before being Student Government Association president, I was a business manager, and then before that as a senator. In each position, I took the time to learn more than what was required of me in my role. But then also when students had questions about things, I didn't just leave things stagnant. You know, we on Fort Valley's campus, we have a lot of renovations happening, and we didn't fully know, you know, timelines or what the full plans were for everything. So I asked around until I got to the project manager for the university, and I figured out, he told me the dates and times of when, you know, the projects would get completed, what they are working on, what the students could look forward to, and I put that together as a review for the student body to read and receive. And that's nothing in any of my job descriptions at the time, but I wanted to show the student body, one, that I cared, but that also that they would have a leader in the future that could get the answers that they needed to be effective. And I think from there, that level of understanding that, hey, this guy, you know, when he says he's going to do something, he does it. Or when we have a question, he actually goes and gets the answer and brings it back to us, instead of just saying, yeah, that's cool, and then you never hear back from them.
Yes, similarly, I would say relationships. That's what, you know, that's what makes people see a leader in you, what makes people trust you. Before the title, before the position, before you were seeking the position, were you talking to people? Were you actively trying to build relationships with people? Because, you know, if the first time I've ever seen you is a campaign season, it seems very disingenuous. It seems transactional, and you don't want people to believe that about you. So for me in particular, what made the difference was I was adamant about building relationships with people before I even sought a position, and not for the sake of the position, just because I wanted to know people and I wanted to feel connected to my campus. And that speaks volumes about one's character, and people remember those things. So that was the biggest thing for me.
Kind of on that same token, just in terms of authenticity, I think that in my regard, I like everything that I was preaching in my platform was something that I was already practicing just throughout my time at Howard University. My platform, All In, was about just encouraging students at Howard to, if there's a position that they see themselves holding, then go for it. There's nothing that separates the people who are currently in positions on campus and other students, other than the fact that some people just had the audacity to put themselves out there and go after those positions. So I think that since I stepped foot on Howard's campus, I always like to say I've been all in since freshman year, since I stepped foot, and I got some yeses and I got some nos, but I never let those things kind of deter me from the type of impact that I just knew I wanted to leave on campus and the experience I knew I wanted to gain. So I think for me, it was, you know, people felt that it was a legitimate platform because they'd seen my face, not just, you know, in positions, but also just being active through volunteering. I did Jumpstart my freshman year, which was like it's an organization that prepares preschool children academically and socially and emotionally for kindergarten. And I was active on student council, and then I served on the court prior to being Miss Howard as well. And then I also am on the dance team. So it's just kind of everything that I wanted to do, I went out for it. And even if I didn't get it, you just, you know, there's this certain tenacity you build when you just put yourself out there for things. And even if you don't get a position or you don't get a goal that you were trying to go for, just that experience and that journey you partake in achieving or trying to achieve that, you learn lessons, you learn things about yourself, you learn things about other people, you learn how to be more prepared for the next kind of journey you try to endure on. So I think for me, like I really did I chose a platform that I felt was represented what I had already been doing on campus, and something that resonated with me and I felt would resonate with other people.
Anybody else want to touch on the topic?
I was going to, but I'm not currently a student leader, so I'm going to leave that question for the current student leaders on here.
Still, as far as like when you were in college, when being a student leader, that still applies to you as well.
So for me, it was a little different because I didn't hold an elected position, but I did serve on Student Government Association as the civic engagement and leadership director. I served as class council president several once. And I also served as a president for National Action Network, which is a civil rights organization on campus. And most of that work really centered on resistance. So like holding the administration accountable when it came to things like student hunger and food insecurity and what potential homelessness would look like at both Spelman College and Morehouse College. Holding the administration accountable when it came to voter access. And so I think my sophomore year, I had an opportunity, I think Mr. Dortch knew that I had an opportunity to register, I think more than 500 students in one day to vote. So that was very, very amazing. But honestly, holding the administration accountable, I think we all know how, I guess, political attending an HBCU can be on campus. And oftentimes a lot of people aren't sure if they should say certain things or do certain things. But having the opportunity to be in the AUC specifically, I knew that we have a history of resistance, specifically when it comes to the administration. And so that history kind of fueled my fire specifically as a student leader, but also just encouraging other young people. I feel like when people see you resist for something that you're passionate about, then I feel that that also gives them the fuel to light their fire as well and say, you know what, if they were able to impact or make a difference on this issue on campus and get the administration to listen, then so can I. And also, of course, helping other people lay out those plans or help them organize and tell them how we did it. And I think that's something that we did, or yeah.
Mary, you just touched on a lot of topics that I want to speak on, especially like the when to say when, and also holding people accountable. Accountability is a big thing. That one thing that I think we don't hold enough people of our color accountable of is learning who to vote for. And a lot of things that we do nowadays, a lot of things that people of our color say are, I'm not going to vote because I feel like both candidates are not qualified for the position, or they try to vote for the lesser evil. And it's a situation to where when we don't vote, we end up with the situation we're in right now, which is not really having a leader in position in office right now. So Mary, can you tell us a few things that we can do to guide our young people of color in the direction they need to go in, as far as knowing who to vote for and holding them accountable for voting?
So it is my understanding that this is a nonpartisan organization. So for the sake of that and the 501c3, I will say that I cannot tell you who to vote for right now, and I won't. But what I will say is a lot of young people have a resistance when it comes to the political process. And I always tell them, you have a right to feel that way. I completely understand your lack of wanting to engage in the political process. And if you feel that there's someone that you don't want to vote for, then what are you waiting for? Why are you not running for office? And I think that's the conversation that we need to begin having with young people specifically, because we do have a lot of people who have been in these positions of power for a very long time, and 30 and 40 years, which I don't think anyone should be holding their political office that long. And I don't care what your contribution has been. I think you should do what you came to do and leave. And so I think if young people are tired of holding these people accountable and we're asking ourselves, who are we supposed to vote for? This is the lesser of two evils. Like, I will march and I will knock on doors for your campaign. Please run for office. But right now, and I also want people to understand the importance of local elections. A lot of people strictly focus on presidential elections. Like, we have a lot of Senate seats that are open that impact us tremendously. I know right here in the state of Georgia, we have several open. That's going to impact us tremendously. Like, focus on your Senate. I'm not saying don't vote for president. Mr. Dortch is giving me the side eye. Like, are you telling them not to? No, vote for president. You know what you need to do. But also focus on those local elections, because that's what's really going to impact you directly for a very, very long time. And I think it's important for you to just, again, do your research on these candidates. You can't always trust social media. Right now, social media is painting a picture about people rioting and looting, when I know, being in Ferguson, that a lot of people were purposely inciting these things, and it was really peaceful protests happening. So do your research. Look into these candidates yourself. Don't trust social media, and really make informed decisions. And I think that's something that we have to do. And again, if you don't see anyone that floats your boat, go online, figure out when the next election in your town or your city or your state is, look at how much money it may cost. And then when you're running for office, call Tommy Dortch and say, I need my first donation. That was the first person that gave me my first donation when I ran for office. Please help me. And I'm sure he will. That's actually how he got his start.
And this next question is directed towards Mr. Alexander Lowe. You spoke about how you did a lot of things that were not in your job description. So one thing I really want to speak on right now is when to say when, as far as speaking up on things that are happening on your campus, whether it has something to do with your position or not. When is the perfect time to say, like, speak on certain things, and when it's not? Like, you talk about a little bit about when to say when.
Ooh, that is a very large aspect of the question, because I guess the first thing I'll say is this: it's situational. You know, there are things that when it comes to, you know, death and the loss of a student, that you address that differently than maybe something that had happened to a student. Maybe if you know there was a large fight per se, and that just like, those are just all different aspects. So I don't think I can give any answer that is a blanket answer for everything. But as a leader, you have to be very knowledgeable of how your people feel, which is the student body, and what they're going through. And it's very interesting that you asked me that, because it's something I'm considering right now, because how has everything happened in the world? How is that affecting the student body? And how do I mention it? I don't think as a leader, unless if you directly have to respond to something, I feel like you do that more on a personal matter, one-on-one between a certain individual. But typically people are understanding of what's going on, and I like to go for more positive statements that are around the topic, but that don't directly mention any individuals. I guess, for example, if any of you have seen my Instagram page and you scroll down, I have this little poem that I wrote in reference to the loss of two of our students a couple of years ago. While I don't directly mention them, you know, it's more so hinting to the understanding of that, you know, we have huge condolences for everything, and we're understanding of the loss that has, and to try to always bring positive energy into a negative situation. I think that's very important as a leader, because everybody already considers the negative aspects of what all the things mean. But I don't think a lot of times people take the time to put positive energy back into a situation.
That's good. Dr. Kimbrough, can you answer that question from a president's perspective?
Yeah, so I'm thinking about what Tangela said earlier when she talked about relationships. I think we discount the power of relationships to get things done. She talked about that as a quality of a leader. And so particularly for student leaders and administration, there should be a relationship that you can have honest and open conversations. You know, it goes back to, you know, people who serve in these roles. We have to ask ourselves, why are we in this role? If I ever get to the point where I come to work and I want to deal with students, I need to go sit my behind down somewhere. It's just real simple. I don't need to just try to hang on because I like being the president or the salary, all the little perks that come with it. Even though I do have colleagues that do that. I'm just being honest about it, that people just hang in there because they like being the president. If I get tired of dealing with my students, I'll type my letter, I'm out, I'll see y'all, okay? That's the way it should be. So we got to develop relationships so we can have those conversations. I just think we discount the power of those relationships to get things done. I think students should be empowered to speak up on a range of issues. I think you have to be open-minded to say, you know, what do you think about this first? And, you know, is this the right issue? Should we be working together? Those of us in administration need to be able to listen. I mean, I went to the University of Georgia. So I was one of the people there threatening in the late 80s, like, look, y'all got some racist stuff going on this campus. So I was one of those people who had those kind of conversations too. So that doesn't bother me. But I think if we can work together to address issues, I think that everybody benefits. So I think I think that's very important for us to do. I think those of us who are in these positions, we need to continue to ask ourselves, do we love what we do? Is this what we're passionate about? Or as one writer said, is this a job that we would do even if we weren't getting paid to do it? And so every day I can say, I would come do this job because I love this job. I'm not gonna have any issues. You know, if my SGA president texts me and he says, hey, and he texts me about all kinds of stuff. I mean, now we might fall out this fall because he says he's gonna come live with us in the fall. And I'm just like, absolutely not, that's not happening. So he's gonna have to stay somewhere else. But that's the kind of relationship we should have. You know what I'm saying? So I think that students should expect for those of us in these positions to have that open relationship, because student leaders are still learning, and that's part of our job too. And we might not always agree, and we need to just start from that to say, look, we're not always going to agree. It's going to be some stuff I have to do that y'all not going to like, and we just going to be mad. Let's be mad and get over it, and then let's keep moving. So I don't want to, you know, pass what I thought Tangela said was very important, is that if we strengthen our relationships, we move our institutions further, we move our communities further. And I think that's very important. So I just wanted to really reinforce what she said, because that resonated with me.
Dr. Kimbrough, at our HBCU, we have student forums with our chancellor. So do you feel that there's a disconnect with the leadership and our student population as far as the HBCUs as a whole, and not even at HBCUs, just in everyday life?
You know, I think sometimes there is a disconnect. You know, different people have a different way that they engage people. I'm not really crazy about having big forums because I provide too much access for people. It's like students know, if you email me and you haven't heard from me in 24 hours, that means somebody has snatched me or I'm dead. I respond to everybody. That's it. If you need to talk, we need to talk. I think we got to be that kind of, you know, we're in a virtual environment now, so there isn't the old school for me to say, I got office hours on, you know, Fridays at 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. Time is out for all of that. Sometimes I have students who I had a student this morning who has an opportunity to work with a politician. So she sent me the email yesterday saying, hey, I want to talk to you about how do I plan to have this meeting to work with this politician. So we had our Zoom meeting at 11 o'clock today. You know, just student trying to, you know, better herself. So how can I then play the mentoring role to help her with that? I thought that was very important to do. So I think we have to continue. And one of the things I've seen, so I'm in my 16th year as a president, as you said. I became a president when I was 37. So I'm still below the average of all presidents, and I've been doing it for 16 years. And so there are a lot of younger presidents that are coming in that are doing some new things and some different things. They're engaging students more on social media. They're using, you know, all the platforms that are available. I think we've got to continue to, you know, elevate what we do and engage students differently. So that's part of our job that we have to be serious about doing. So I think that's important. So that's why when Mr. Dorff asked me to do this, I was like, I was going to do it for him anyway. But part of it for me is to be selfish because I like to hear what's going on different campuses. What are y'all thinking about? What's going on? So it's an opportunity for me to keep learning and to think about what I do on my campus. And I think we all have to be open to learning. So even though I have a lot of experience as a president, there's still things I can learn as students change, the dynamics change of students. So I still want to learn, you know, how that, you know, impacts everything. And then I got little kids at the house. I got a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old. So I see the next wave of students and what that's going to be like because I live with that. So that gives me a different perspective too, as a dad to that age group of students. So I think it's important for us to really sometimes get out of our comfort zone and sit and just listen to the students. And, you know, smaller groups, I like go to lunch with groups of students, small groups, tell me what's going on. And that's always been very helpful for me.
So he talked about everything going to be in virtual now, especially with the COVID-19 that we have going on right now. So my next question is for Alexander and my queens as well. With you being in the position that you're in right now, how has everything moving virtually affected you, and what are some things that you've done to adjust to the COVID-19 situation that we're in right now with your student body, still engaging with them? What are some things that you're doing now to do that and to enhance the relationship that you already have with your student body?
Well, I think this goes back to when we talked about what a leader is, and I mentioned flexibility. That was something that I've definitely learned to value within this time period of the pandemic. So as soon as the change to, you know, virtual remote learning happened, one of the things that I tried to do to continue to engage Spelman, I had a series. So my platform is The Pursuit of Wholeness. And so I did a whole, you know, 4-part documentary series on wholeness and on, you know, like talking about Spelman's sisterhood, Spelman's culture, and how we can move it forward. So these are conversations that I wanted to have on campus, that I wanted to have forums and interactive events, but because that couldn't happen, what is a way that we can kind of, transform the same idea? So it became a documentary. It was released in parts so people can interact, and we encourage people to talk about and to add to the conversation themselves. The documentary was Spelman students talking about Spelman's culture. And so students can actively see themselves and they see their friends, so they're sharing it and they're resharing it, telling people's stories. So it continued to, have that conversation that I wanted to have anyway. And of course, the Hall of Fame, during this, semester is when we're very heavy with the legacy lecture series. So we're visiting different HBCUs and we're having those types of conversations. So this forum itself was a way to kind of substitute and replace that tradition. And as you can see, we're still having those conversations. We're still engaging both students, HBCU leaders, and the larger HBCU community.
Yeah, I will say definitely echo everything that Tangela just said. But in addition to that, I guess ways that the court at Howard so far has tried to kind of support its students. We've been engaging a lot more on social media. And then we also, for this year, we took on an actual, added a person to our team, a social media lead. We have a team now. So, and we let them know, as we were interviewing, just depending on how things play out with the virus, your role could be really, really critical and also just really transformational. Just in terms of, we've never seen anything like this before. We're in a very unique state in our world, and a huge part of what we bring to the campus is programming. So it's been a lot of trying to plan for what that may look like. And if, there's a lot of different ideas circulating right now about just Howard and whether we'll return to class. As for all the other schools as well, a lot of people have been talking about if we're on campus, but maybe still doing online classes or other hybrid kind of forms of learning. So we've really been trying to think proactively of creative ways we can keep people engaged and still program, because we still do intend to host programs and assist the student body in that way. We did, me and my Mr. Howard, we facilitated a question and answer for the incoming freshmen. I believe we held it right before May 1st, which is the day everyone has to decide. And so we held just an online forum where people could ask questions about Howard. And we just kind of took that as an opportunity to tell people why they should choose Howard, but more so why they should just choose an HBCU in general. So I think that's an example of some of the ways we've been trying to support everyone in the time, in this crazy time that we're in right now. And I think definitely this summer is going to be filled with a lot of planning and preparing for, I don't want to say the worst because there's positive in everything, but preparing for all of our options, because we do definitely intend to program and assist the student body in any way we can.
I definitely echo those sentiments. I think the question, CDK, is something I ask myself, honestly, every single day. Currently, me and Randall Barnes of HBCU Pulse have started the Fort Valley State University College Declassified Survival Guide off of the TV show. And every Thursday, I've had the opportunity to talk to the class of FVSU 24 and kind of break down to them, what does Fort Valley look like in the past and some of the things that we're looking forward to the future, and just build that relationship with them. And in the background, the Student Government Association is really working on bolstering our public relations committee to be able to provide some sort of engagement throughout this summer portion of time. So those are kind of the things that we're currently working on. And then also planning of homecoming, making sure that is a smooth process, because while homecoming is already a huge, feat to bring together in a normal setting, I think all HBCUs are having a challenge this year to really discuss what homecoming looks like, if there might need to be, different plans on how you enact that. But on our campus, I wanted to make sure that the student body knew that we were still attentive about, keeping things as similar to the past as possible, even though things have to be different. But making sure they're engaged and they got to see a tentative schedule of our 3 different plans to kind of make homecoming happen in all the different possible senses, whether it be, socially distanced or virtual, just to get an idea of what we were looking forward to. So I think that aspect of keeping the student body engaged has been there, and making sure that we get their feedback and let them understand that we're very serious about making sure they are a part of, Fort Valley's culture and how we move forward.
So a big part of being a student leader is your image, especially on the Royal Court, and of course, Alexander, with you being an SGA president, even when you don't have your suit and tie on, even when you guys don't have your crowns on, your crown is always on. The spotlight is always on you. So a question from one of our viewers were, how do you toggle between leadership roles and your reality, taking time for yourself and family? Like when you're not in yourself in your leadership role, what are you doing in your personal time? How do you toggle between balancing the two?
Well,
I think that, oh, you can go. Okay. I think that really, and this was definitely something that I was thinking about going into this call, how just as student leaders, you kind of have to carry that burden of trying to be there for other people when you yourself are going through the pandemic as well. But I think that it can just be transparent leadership. I don't think that just because we are in a position of leadership, that we have to pretend as if everything is okay. And obviously we want to offer a very optimistic perspective to inspire other people who may be having a really difficult time to kind of see a light at the end of the tunnel. But I think it's very authentic to share, your own experiences and your own battles, just coming to terms with everything in the pandemic. And I think that's a good way to approach everything, because it humanizes everything that we are experiencing. Because it really is, when you really take a step back and think about just the state of the world that we're in, everything that's occurring right now, especially things that have developed within the past few days, it's really a crazy time that we're in. So I think that we have to remind ourselves in this position to be there for ourselves as much as we are for other people. But I just really think that, authentic leadership can just be being transparent. And if you're struggling, you can tell people you're struggling. I share a lot of articles with other people about coping with disappointment or coping with different things. I've reached out to a lot of high school seniors, talking to them about their experience and having to graduate without a prom and without a proper graduation and things like that. So I think humanizing everything is really how I've chosen to go about just navigating through the crazy time that we're in.
Yeah, similarly to Taylor's point, you kind of cheat the system when you decide to be authentic in your leadership in a good way. So I don't have to worry about image, or I don't have to worry about being so calculated or curated when I have pledged myself to authentic leadership. So for me, even with my platform being the pursuit of wholeness, I kind of live by this idea of holistic acceptance, and that extends to me as well. I can be all of who I am at any point in time. And I encourage you all to do the same, kind of that idea. But also I think it's important as a leader to create boundaries for yourself. And this goes into the idea of, as a leader, you have to really be aware of who you are. And as you grow in your responsibilities, you need to grow in self-awareness, because there are times when you just have to step back. With all the authenticity in the world, sometimes I didn't want to be Miss Spellman that day, or I didn't want to be called Miss Spellman that day. I just want to be Tangela. And what does that look like for me? If that looks like staying in my room, if that looks like, staying with one of my friends who lives off campus and just being with her that day, or whatever that looks like for me as a student leader, you have to create those boundaries, because they won't be created for you. People a lot of times will just assume that you got it until you say otherwise. And specifically with Queendom, a lot of things just come to you. An hour before a speech, it's like, hey, we need you to talk to these people. Okay. And you have to show up in those spaces. And the only way that you can sustain that type of schedule is if you create the boundaries for yourself on the back end, so you don't self-destruct. You need to deliver.
This is very a a very hit topic for me because I'm currently struggling with that, if I'm being fully honest. I can do the SGA president work, the meetings, the organizational structure. That is stuff that I've been dreaming about, and I'm excited to knock down. But handling being Alexander Lowe, aside from being SGA president, is something that I'm really struggling with right now. Even in this, I guess you would think in this virtual space that it'd be easier because you don't have to directly see students every single day. So like, it's not like everybody can directly pull from you. But even still, like, I think there's a higher pressure that I put on myself because I don't want anybody to have less of an experience because of what has happened. And I know I definitely internalized that a lot on myself. And then I also understand, the current community of Fort Valley State University. I look around at my peers and I see so many talented individuals, but a lot of times they're sleeping on ourselves. And I find that so crazy that, I have so many people who can start their own businesses and have talents that I've never seen before. And it's just like, but you don't see like how far you can go with it. And what the thing I've told myself is that I will not be a good SGA president just off of anything I do this year. I realize that I have to inspire something into my peers to be, better than they currently are and to step into who they are themselves, to run an organization, as a group of people together versus, just me leading and barking orders at people. So with all that pressure that I put on myself, which I think is important, but I know I need to shift how I focus that and how I manage my time. I really struggle with taking care of the person that I am, but I am excited that I have, my colleagues, my fellow SGA presidents at other HBCUs. We talk on a regular basis and we break down, the ideas that we have going on and the challenges we have at our universities, because there's not an SGA president that you can call up and say, hey, how did you handle, a national pandemic? We're all going through this together. And I think that support system is one of my larger aspects of how I'm making it, day to day. And then also just my other leaders who have inspired me at Fort Valley State University.
Right. And part of a leader, I feel, is knowing how to read the room. So with the current pandemic that we have going on, especially as students, we were put in a lot of situations where it affects everybody. We were put in a lot of situations where we were spontaneously have to move on our feet because at one time they were moving it week by week as far as we were going to virtual learning. And then it was a situation where we could do virtual learning but be on campus. And then the next week we had to move off campus immediately. So Dr. Kimbrough, this next question is directed towards you as a leader of and the president of Dillard University. With the incoming freshmen, right now at our HBCU, we might have to cancel orientation. A lot of vital things like open house didn't happen. So how can you help make that transition for the incoming freshmen and the incoming students or transfer students at your university in a leadership position?
Yeah, so everybody's trying to figure out how will we do some of those things. So to go back to your part, because I know it's frustrating for our students too when you sort of, think you're going to be able to do it one way. And a lot of times, particularly for this pandemic, the decisions were not solely made by the institutions. So for us, we had an original date that we'll go online. And then I think it was like March the 23rd. But then March the 13th, the governor closed all the K through 12 schools. Well, then that changes everything because then you got faculty and staff scrambling like, what am I going to do with these kids at the house? So then we had to start moving things up, and then they put a cap on a number of people, and they put the stay at home. So we were responding just as well. And so that's part of our planning going forward, trying to communicate to people to say, this is sort of what we think, but the mayor or the governor could come in and change the whole thing. So everybody's got to have a level of flexibility to say, okay, what's going to go on? So with that in mind, then you have to start thinking, you got a group of people, maybe Taylor mentioned this, you talk about people who, Taylor or Tangela, I can't remember who talked about it. It's freshmen who they sort of ended their high school career, sort of like blah, and they're really looking forward to starting their college career. Mm-hmm. And they're going into something where there's a lot of unknowns. So I think you're going to see a lot of institutions sort of spread out the acculturation, if you will, about the institution, to do trainings across the summer with students and parents, to try to think of creative ways to say, if you do orientation, what does it look like? I mean, you know, some campuses are having the conversations, if we're going to have people on campus, who do you bring back? Do you just bring back the freshmen? But then if you just bring back the freshmen, you still need upperclassmen there to help teach them the campus culture. So who gets to come back, who doesn't? So those are things that everybody's wrestling with right now, because I'm on calls with presidents and everybody's trying to figure out, like, how do you make these decisions? But I think you raise a point that we're all going to have to be creative. And so I think this becomes a great opportunity for student leaders to say, all right, if we had to design something to teach people, you know, what the culture's like at North Carolina A&T, what does that look? What are the key things that they need to know, and how do we start to teach some of that in a virtual experience to at least begin that process? Because you want them to at least get hooked on it that first semester. So hopefully, if you start off online, when they get to campus, they do have some sense of it. So I think all of us, and I think a lot of times student leaders are probably in a better position to lead that kind of conversation about what does that look like for those students, to teach them those things that are important. So once again, it's about the relationships. It's all of us working together to say what's important for new students and their families to know going into a fall that no one has ever seen before. And that's for all of us, we're all figuring it out. So I think that's just a transparency we all have to say. And I'm quick to say, like, look, I've been doing this a long time. I ain't never seen nothing like this. We're going to figure it out together. I mean, it's very freeing to me because I'm being completely transparent and honest. And I read as much as I can. I talk to lots of my colleagues. But, I mean, I know the science changes almost every day. And it's frustrating for me. If you asked me 3 weeks ago, I would have told you, you don't need a mask. Worry about the surfaces. This week they said, no, you need a mask. Don't worry about the surface. What are they going to say in 2 months? I have no idea. So that's it's a challenge because it's a fluid situation. So we got to start thinking to say, what's really important for new students to know if they're going to, you know, a Fort Valley State, or if they're going to Spelman, if they're going to Howard, what's important for them to know? And then how do we start to develop some of that? Because then you guys can start doing, I know my SGA president has done some of this, but you guys can do this as SGA, as Royal Court, to say, we're going to do some Zoom info sessions and start telling people what the culture is like. Or we're going to, you know, have video clips we show throughout the year about what certain things are like, but they still won't get to experience it the same way. I mean, it's probably, y'all are, you know, for the most football or football related schools, so homecoming is very different for you than it would be for us at Dillard. But that's a big part of the experience. It's going to look differently no matter what we do in the fall. So I think it's an opportunity for all of us to work together, to be creative, to create something we've never seen before for a period of time we've never seen before. So I think we've got to sort of lean into it. We can't lament about what is not going to be, but I think we have to get excited about the possibility of creating something that nobody's ever done before. So I'm trying to shift my mind to stop worrying about what I can't do and to say, what can we do that we've never done before, and get excited about that. And I think that's got to be our mindset, because that's going to keep us sane. If we keep thinking about what we can't do, we're all going to be depressed. So we got to just be creative and lean into this thing and say, what can we do and what can we learn from each other and do something creative? So that's my suggestion. So if y'all figure it out, y'all let me know. Y'all can email me. I'm open to suggestions.
That's going back to being transparent with your crowd. So Mary, you spoke on this next topic a little bit earlier. There's some students that come into a position for a notch on their resume, but and there's some students that actually come in there to do work. How do we weed those folks out? Do you have any advice?
That is the culture. There are literally always going to be people who use these opportunities to build their resume. But you honestly cannot think about those people. You just have to do your work. You know, there have been times where, you know, in certain organizations or like leadership roles that I was in, there were literally people that didn't want to come to meetings. There were literally people that didn't want to do the work that they needed to do to put on some of the events that we had to do on campus. There were people who really didn't look at, you know, their job description before they decided to get this position. So you really can't worry about those people. You really just have to worry about you and understand what you came there to do, and be prepared to sometimes pick up the load. For me specifically, some of the positions that I did, there were a lot of co's, right? It's almost like when you are assigned a group assignment and everyone knows, you know, being in a group assignment is not always fun because you're probably going to be the one doing all the work. that's fine, right? Just be prepared to do that because you are to a leader, and do it. You just have to worry about you.
Right, and this next question that's leading to my next question for the student leaders. As far as my queens and Alexander. So first, be a great leader. You have to be a good follower. So there's also people that you work with in your daily professions that don't play their role. How do you deal with those folks when they don't play their role, and how does that affect the rest of your court and the rest of your administration? What do you do with those people?
Well, similarly to what Mary said, I mean, the show must come on. The show must go on. The boat keeps moving. Because being the leader of an organization, if it's someone within, for instance, for Miss Spellman, we have the Miss Spellman Advisory Board. So it's a board of about 15 girls who, help underpin all the work and any initiative or work that I want to do. So someone within that organization isn't really carrying their load. Of course, that's a teachable moment. First of all, is everything okay? Is everything all right? Is there a reason why, you're not delivering? Because you're in this position, you were given this position because we believe in you and your potential, and we know that you can do it. So if you aren't, first, let's make sure that we're asking you if there's a reason why you aren't delivering. If everything's cool, then it's like, okay, well, there's some room for improvement, and there's a conversation that can happen. So I personally always believe that when you lead with grace, you have the potential to save a relationship before it's ruined. So I don't want to ever go into it just believing the worst about the people that I work with, that you're irresponsible, you just don't want to do it. And so leading with that grace, about 99% of the time, there's some extenuating circumstance, and there's a way that we can fill in the gap until said circumstance is taken care of. And for the other portions, like Mary said, let's just keep it going. And I'll let the higher up, so my advisor or the people who look over me, I'll let them handle that situation. It's no longer in my hands. My job is the work of the org. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll say this. Go ahead, Taylor.
That's okay. You're so nice. You can go.
All right. So what I was going to say, I think it comes from two things for a lot of issues in this department, is lack of communication and a lack of an understanding of the overall vision and the bigger picture. So I'm on that same vein with Tangela. I really inherently believe that for the majority of people, when they enter a position like this, they want to do good. Or they want to do in their mindset, what is a good job or what they feel they're supposed to be doing. But one thing I don't think people realize is that there are thousands of ways to do a good job at something. There are thousands of things as student leaders that you can do. But you can easily mess up the overall effect of an administration if you're not on one accord and you're not going through for a certain goal. There might be 3 large problems happening at your university, but instead of everybody trying to shoot at each of the 3 of them, if you and your administration is solely focused on one, you might actually be able to completely quell it and not have that issue in the future. And then the next administration can handle the other 2 problems. So then you have 2 long-lasting problems instead of 3 long-lasting problems. And that's one of the biggest things that I spent the first month with my administration of explaining how the campaign theme carried over into what our focus would be. And I laid out a 5-phase plan of what we would focus on, and I got feedback ahead of time, and I wanted to make sure everybody saw how they fit into it as well. Because sometimes people don't understand, where you're going. And if they don't understand where they're going, they typically try to figure out a way or a direction they can go themselves. So then the next aspect is communication. Make sure that everybody understands what the larger goal is. Because I come from a background of a lot of leadership. I'm an Eagle Scout. I served in student organizations in high school. Leadership is something that has been taught to me and a big importance in my life for a long time. but not many people have done that. You know, some people, when they get to college and they enter SGA, it's the first time they've been a part of a student government of any type. They don't understand Robert's Rules of Orders. They don't understand the, you know, purpose of what they're doing. Some people want to lead and have a heart for it, but don't know how to be good leaders, because there is training and education on how to be a good leader. So I think as, you know, maybe higher up student leaders, it's really on us to recognize, you know, the lack of communication of where, you know, some of our peers are at. Because typically, like I said, people don't typically want to do a bad job. They typically want to do a good job, but sometimes our versions and understandings of what a good job don't line up.
I think Alexander touched on a really important thing that I was just going to emphasize, that a lot of times when people maybe aren't fulfilling the requirements, a lot of times it isn't them just being lazy. They may genuinely not know how to do that. They may not have the experience. So I definitely try to look at things as a teaching moment. And I think, just noting back to earlier when we were talking about relationships, those are especially important in those instances, because you establish those relationships ahead of time. It's easier to have those conversations with people where it's I need you to pick things up a little bit, or, I expect a little more from you, or, there's a disconnect. So I think those relationships are really important in instances like those. And I think specifically at Howard, the culture, it kind of forces everybody to feel like they have to be involved in something, or they have to be doing 10 things at one time, because you're just, and I know it's not just Howard specific, just HBCUs in general, you're surrounded by all of these amazing, talented people, and they have all these things going on, and so you feel compelled to do things. And I think at that point, that's when sometimes your involvement in a certain org or in a position can become kind of transactional. And I think it's important to hold people accountable for, at the very least, doing the work. Even if you can pinpoint that someone's intentions may not be as genuine as you had hoped, at the end of the day, if you can convince them or show them the value in at the very least doing the work that you signed up to do, I think you can at the very least respect that person, and just turn it into a teaching moment, really. Just remember, or encourage people to remember, you want those long lasting impressions on people to be really positive. And I've encountered, I think, people at Howard, and I've had mentors who have poured into me where, I haven't been perfect in everything that I've been involved in, and I can recognize where I wasn't perfect. But it's about being open, and even when you are in a position where you're overseeing people, giving people that grace to learn and to still be growing and maturing.
That's right. A good sign of a leader is being able to bring groups of people together. But as a leader, how do you look to bring other leaders together sometimes when you're trying to obtain the same position or the goal of a good whole? Let's start with Alexander for that one.
Okay.
Like you on that one.
Yeah. Could you rephrase that or repeat it again for me?
So as far as basically when you're running for the same position sometimes, and say you might lose a position, but you're trying to bring other leaders together from different organizations, how do you bring those people together as leaders, as far as the chain of command? Because sometimes it can be a power struggle. So what are some tips for that as far as keeping that in order?
So, wow, I guess it definitely comes back to relationships again. I think that we've touched on it a lot, but I'll start with that, because I'll go into this. I ran for Student Government Association president. I ran against our past vice president, and me and him served on the e-board together when I was business manager. And while, maybe for some of the other races, they might have been more heated between the individuals, me and him were chilling the entire time because of the relationship we had. We had talked in August that, both of us were going to do it. And I completely respect that. He's a great leader, and I know he feels the same way about me. And you can be competitive without being toxic, and we had supported each other, and we built our friendship during that entire year. So how does 1 week of getting a position, change that and make that all go away? So that, I think that is something that you have to build that relationship for. But what's also interesting that I found for myself, is that him having the knowledge and the intelligence to be president of the Student Government Association, he still needed in the Student Government Association, and so we have, he's serving as the CAB president for the year, which is, a very big is a very big part of SGA in terms of making sure campus activities are running smoothly. And I needed someone who had that aspect and that understanding to be able to do that. But if I had had a whole toxic relationship with the person that I was running against, I would be missing a huge important role of what's going to make this administration successful. So, and I think that's just something very interesting that a lot of, my peers don't fully understand. Like everybody that ran, whether they won or lost, in some aspect, they're still serving a part of the Student Government Association, because that understanding of leadership is something we need in multiple facets. In terms of bringing other student leaders together, I know Fayetteville State University does this, and I'm taking this idea from them. I know other universities do it too, but a student president's chamber to bring together, a president's roundtable. And so I want to bring together the other leaders of the registered student organizations on campus so we can better collaborate our events throughout the entire year. And this goes to flaws of issues of communication. It makes no sense that whenever we have events on campus, we'll have 2 or 3 at the same time, but we're still struggling to keep events going the entire of the week or into the weekend. So why would you ever have overlapping events if you have that issue? But it's because we have that challenge of communication. Now I want to facilitate that network with everybody to where we lay out our events and we talk about it. It's like, hey, maybe let's not all throw our events on Tuesday night, at 6. Maybe somebody go Monday, some of us go Wednesday. And that is just the whole aspect of that is for further collaboration to make your university better. So yeah, I'll stop on that aspect right there.
I think Alexander said something very important. Like even the way you ended your point, you said it's all working together to make the university better. And I would say if we all have the same goal, we can work through anything. So whether or not I, became Miss Spelman or someone else did, at the end of the day, I'm worried about what is best for Spelman, who's going to serve Spelman. And if Spelman chose someone else for that role, that's okay. I can support her. I can support her initiatives. Of course, you might have your own, level of personal disappointment that you work through in your own time. But when I'm ready to be present, I can be present. And so what's interesting about Spelman is, particularly for the Miss Spelman role, the court is chosen through the pageant. So whoever is first and second in the pageant becomes the court for Miss Spelman. So you actively have to work with the people, with whom you competed. And so even when I'm giving advice to, the Miss Spelmans or the contestants coming after me, I always say the most important thing is to, again, lead with kindness, to build relationships, because you don't know who of these women you are going to have to work with for the next 10 months. And so if you've spent this whole time being competitive and trying to, be cutthroat and get ahead, and then you are on a court with these people, and now you've compromised your effectiveness as a court because you didn't build relationships, and now you guys can't get anything done. So even if you aren't, a naturally kind person, or if you're not concerned with building relationships, some people are so, one track minded. It's like, I'm not here for friends. I'm here for whatever. Even if you're that type of person, it just doesn't make sense logically for you and for, your goals to not build relationships, because at the end of the day, you ruin your own effectiveness. And so, that can apply to any organization. So when we say bringing leaders together, it's about humility. It's about respecting everyone's voice at the table. It's understanding that your knowledge set and your skill set isn't the end all be all, and we all can learn from each other. And if that's your disposition in any room you go into, there's not a problem with building relationships. We all are in this room for the same reason. All of us on this panel, we're here for the same reason. And so we can work through whatever miscommunications or disappointments, or just, the basic tug and pull of human existence. All that can be dealt with because at the end of the day, we are all going in the same direction.
Right. Okay. So for this next question, this is directed towards Dr. Kimbrough and our student leaders. Sometimes we spoke about this a little bit earlier, but sometimes there's a disconnect between the student leaders and administration. How have you faced these issues? And if you have faced these issues, how do you close the gap for the best thing for the whole HBCU as far as like, how is that dynamic?
Yeah, like I said before, I think that we've got to focus on building authentic relationships. There isn't going to be agreement all the time. I think the thing I worry about is that there are different dynamics on different campuses. And so I think if you're a student at one place and you have a different kind of culture than another place where it is much more combative to say, then people try to apply that, and that's not the best situation to do. I mean, I remember about 4 years ago, we had some students protest because we hosted a Senate debate. In some kind of way, David Duke made the cutoff, and people wanted me to cancel. And I was like, we've rented out the space. It's not even our event. So they paid so I had some folks who were mad, and there was a group of students who were really mad and did all the, showing out and getting people. And I was just thinking behind the scenes, I'm like, okay, so this one has been to my house for Thanksgiving 3 years in a row. This one has asked for me to get them tickets for the Bayou Classic. So it's sort of like, are we performing? Because when you want to get some things done behind the scenes, you got those things done. But it's sort of like, I got to get caught up in the adversarial nature. And so one of the things I try to tell my students, if I'm completely ignoring you and not doing my job, yes, you should be combative and drag me and do whatever. But if you don't even at least give me a chance to like have the conversation and go back and forth, that's a problem. And so I don't want us to be on campuses so much where everything has to be combative, because you can't operate everything like that. That's just not a viable strategy for getting things done. You're going to have some give and take to develop relationships. And I think a lot of times we get caught up on, it's got to be us versus the administration, when it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. Now, there are some, like I said, I got some colleagues whose heads are hard, and they're going to have to get lit up a little bit. And if they get lit up, they get lit up. I'm okay with that. But I think at least the initial effort should be on both sides. How do we try to work together and form authentic relationships to work to better the institution? Because, just falling out and having these public falling outs doesn't always mean that's better for the institution. And there are some people who thrive off of that to say, I want to be combative, when that's not always the best strategy. So I think we all have to, like I said, we got to think about why we're here, and particularly those of us who are presidents. We got to decide, do we really want to engage students in a meaningful way? And the day that we don't want to do that, we need to step out the way and let somebody who wants to do that job to do it. I think that's the way it goes. So that's always been my, my perspective. It's like, okay, we can disagree. Let's sit down. Let's talk. Let's go sit down. Let's go have dinner. Let's argue. We still might not agree, but don't go out and start dragging me and you hadn't even talked to me about it. That's a problem, So I want us to be able to develop that kind of relationship. I think is very important.
But before we go to the next person, I want to chime in on what you said. One thing that when I travel a lot as far as the other HBCUs, and one thing that I see is when it comes to administration, I talk to administration and I talk to the student leaders because that's how I get there. One thing that I do see is when the administration is more open to talking to their students and not just saying, this is what's going on because I said so, and they give an understanding of what's going on, they receive that differently. Yeah. And the events run smoother as far as what's going on, because the students receive it a different way rather than just, okay, well, that's the administration. I'm going to be a rebel. But if they have that respect, that genuine respect on both parties, then students, they don't do that as much as other schools may do. And I've seen that a lot in smaller schools as well. Yeah. Smaller schools they're more open to doing that, and they're closer because we have so many students at our bigger HBCU. I feel like it's a disconnect a little bit because you're getting lost in a number. Everybody's more so of a number than a name. Where then at the smaller schools, you get a little bit more time to get to know these people on a personal level. So you're like, okay, this person is doing this because that's how they are, rather than this person is doing this because that's how they genuinely feel. So let's go to the next person if anybody else wants to speak on that topic as far as the disconnect between administration and student leaders.
Yeah, I will say, I think respect, like you touched on, but respect for me is a huge thing. If you genuinely have respect and deference, like for your administrators and for your institution at large, then there's just a certain way you'll go about things. Like me personally, I definitely, there are areas like at Howard that can use some love and ways that we could improve, but you will never find me writing a think piece on Twitter, a whole thread bashing the school, because I just have so much respect for Howard as an institution. You won't see me doing that. In the same way with admin, I think that you can disagree as long as you respectfully disagree. And as long as I think both parties have that mutual understanding just of respect, because we do at the end of the day have a common goal. The way you approach things is how you form a good, I would say, like student leader to admin relationship. Because I know just going into the year, a lot of this, is also speaking like from experiences that I've had at Howard, but also just proactively as I'm like going into my position or going into my term. I've already been in communication with a lot of administrators and just different faculty and things like that. And I think that we have definitely built just a good mutual understanding in terms of their expectations of me, but they're also receptive to like my expectations of them. So definitely is a two-way street, but respect, I think, is critical on both sides.
I know a lot of universities, oh, my bad, Tangela.
No, you're fine, go ahead.
All right. I know a lot of universities deal with, that disconnect. And I know in some aspects, Fort Valley has it, but I'm really happy that I have a university full of administrators who care very deeply about, the student body perspective and everything. And I can say that because I've personally talked to them and I've built that relationship. Now, I know from the student perspective, that might not fully be the case because of sometimes of the way they get information. And that is I think that is a big issue that we need to work on. It's just like our communication structure between the staff and administrators and the student body. I think a lot of our issues kind of stem from that, because when you have a group of people whose is neither of these are an issue, but like think about how this aspect can create challenges. When you have a group of people whose knowledge bases or their receiving of information and entertainment, comes from television and the newspaper and Facebook, because some of our current student generation doesn't even use Facebook like that. And when our current student generation is using Instagram and Twitter, those two levels of information look different. And, if you control information in education, you also control the mindset of the individuals, who are receiving it. So there is definitely a huge disconnect in terms of how people perceive different things already there. And then I will say this for the sake of the administrators, because I feel like, this aspect of unfairness happens. There's a lot of students who say stuff, but have never taken the time to have a conversation and sit down with a lot of these administrators. And I would say, that's not fair. Like I have not had an experience on Fort Valley's campus where I have said, hey, I wanted to, set up a meeting, come talk to you about X, Y, Z. And there was never a time where I wasn't able to get a meeting or a sit down or just a brief, understanding of, what it was that I was going for. And so when I talked to them, I got that clarity. And so now I'm good and everything, but you still have students who are chilling in their dorms who have never even been to these people's offices or even in their buildings, and they just have their perspective of what's going on. And that's not fair. So students, we have to work to make sure that we also take time to connect to our advisors, and our administrators. It's their job to connect to us, but realistically, one person trying to connect, with 1,000, 2,000 plus students is very challenging. When you have direct issues, it's kind of on us in some aspects to make sure we go and bring it to them.
I just want to tag on to that point. For me, I think one of the most unfortunate things that I've seen, especially now acting as a student leader, is this inherent distrust of administration that students kind of just come in with. So there's this assumption that your administration is not well-intentioned, that they don't move in consideration of students, that they don't necessarily want what's best for students. And the administrators are kind of coming in and have to, it's like you're guilty until proven innocent. So I assume the worst about you until you show me why I should believe otherwise. And usually the measuring stick by which students, believe or, say my administration is for me is or not, is if the administration moves or solves problems in the manner in which that particular student saw in their mind. So if you don't do what I believe is best for the campus, you don't care about what's best for the campus. And that's really unfortunate. And I think it causes a rift that doesn't have to be there. And that's why you have students who sit in their dorm rooms and they don't make those connections, or they're not moving. And it's because they're like, oh, they don't listen to us anyway. But have you tried? Have you even spoken up? Also, there's a format to things, and there are channels of communication that already exist. So we understand you have administration, then you have the student body, and then that kind of liaison between the two are your student leaders. Student leaders, we have our our ear to the ground. We're very much so a part of campus culture. But at the same time, we understand those channels of communication. We know the chain of command. We know how to officially get things to administration. We know what resources are available. And while that information is public knowledge and is available for all students, we are often the ones that students can go to first and say, hey, I want to know something about this. And you might automatically think, okay, in their minds, it might be automatically a president conversation when it might be a departmental conversation. Like there is a way in which things happen. And so when students have that same level of distrust for their student leaders, we have an even bigger issue. And so I say that because just looking at how when, COVID really took root and we had information developing at fast rates, and every day it was something different, and students are demanding certain answers from administration when they're saying everything is unsure right now. I can't tell you exactly what's about to happen next semester, or how things are going to look, because we're actively trying to figure that out too. And I didn't see that level of grace being extended to administration nor to the student leaders. So then students were looking at student leaders saying, well, administration isn't moving the way I want them to. What are you doing? Or what are you not doing? Because obviously there's no movement happening. And it was just a lot of those back and forths, and that stress could have been mediated by trust. If I trust that my student leaders and I trust that my administration wants what's best for the students, I can sit in uncertainty for a second. I can let you figure it out. I can trust that you are doing that work. And so when we have big things that happen like the pandemic, it's exposed. That level of distrust is very much so exposed, because an issue that could have been handled in a more pleasant manner in terms of how students responded wasn't, So I think, Alexander, you said it perfectly. It's a matter of students reaching out and actively, acting on these opportunities for relationship that exist. And if you solely put it on your administration to do it, it's really unfair in that manner. And I understand it's hard when you say that as a student leader, because people say, of course you're going to say that, you are Miss Whoever, you are the president, you work on SGA, you're one of them now, but it's unfortunate that it isn't until you get into these positions and you get that proximity that you're able to speak so well and speak to the character and the heart of your administration. And so how can we change that to where someone who isn't even in an elected position can see that heart posture and can see that we're all on the same team here? So
really quickly, I know Mr. George might get mad at me, but it would not be me if I did not say something. But I will say that there are often times where students should not be afraid to call out the administration. Sometimes a think piece on Twitter is necessary. When a girl feels like her sexual assault was not handled properly, then I think that students should hold that administration accountable and say, you know what, you all aren't doing enough to protect students on campus. When students feel that certain orgs are not doing what they are supposed to do to uplift the message or stand behind students, then I think it is necessary for them to try to hold student organizers accountable. And that's really just the job that student organizers or leaders in general, even if this is, just you at work. When you are a leader in a position, people are supposed to hold you accountable. Last year when I graduated, Keisha Lance Bottoms was the commencement speaker. And students were upset about Keisha Lance Bottoms being the commencement speaker because we were a school of Black women and this was a Black elected official. And I know Keisha Lance Bottoms. I supported Keisha Lance Bottoms in her campaign. but Keisha Lance Bottoms is a leader in a community. And if these students want to hold her accountable, then they have a right to hold her accountable when it comes to issues that they feel that they should hold her accountable for. So if you are a student who is watching, I don't want you to feel like, okay, well, you know, you don't have a right to speak out about certain issues, because sometimes you do. And sometimes resistance in certain issues or cases, I think Alexander said, know when to do when, or I don't know the exact quote, Alexander, I'm sorry, but you know, you need to know when it's time to do certain things and when it's not time to do certain things. And I think earlier we talked about picking our battles. You know, if this is, oh, someone scrubbed the mural off the wall, and it was a mural, it's a mural, you know, it's fine. But if this is us talking about a serious issue that is at the detriment of students, then that's what you need to do.
Right, and we're coming up on our time for today, and it all leaves us wanting more. We had great conversations today, so I'm going to give you a second to give your last final words from each of our panelists, and then Mr. Dorch is going to close us out at the end. And today's been a great conversation, so we can start with Taylor, and then we can go to each panelist.
So my final words, I just want to encourage everybody to be all in. Like I mentioned before, the platform that I ran on and that I really do uphold, just like while you're at school, there are so many ways to leave an impact on your campus that don't have to be this explicit or like overt student leadership position. There are so many different ways to do work and to leave a genuine impact on your campus and your community surrounding your campus as well. I just, like Howard, what's really important for me is that the court finds a way to leave an impact just on the DMV community, because historically that's what Howard has been, beyond just impacting people who come through Howard. So I just really, really would encourage, especially the seniors graduating during just this crazy time and may have feel, you know, robbed of a lot of experiences. I would just encourage you to understand that there's a reason for everything, and you do have a purpose. What's ordained for you will not pass you. So when you embark on your journey just beyond high school, whether it's at a college or not, just know that, you know, you have to stand firm in your purpose. And the only thing separating you from the things that you envision yourself achieving is just that audacity to prepare yourself and to just literally go out for things. I promise that I said this a lot just while I was campaigning, you know, a lot of the people that you see in these positions, is not that people are more competent than you or are more skilled than you. A lot of times it's just people having that confidence within themselves and their abilities to want to share that with other people and fully apply themselves. So understand your value and just know that there is truly nothing stopping you from obtaining the things that you envision yourself obtaining. So thank you again for inviting me to be on this platform. I really enjoy just speaking with you guys. I'm very inspired by all the people on this panel as well. And I just hope, you know, everyone stays safe and we have an amazing rest of the summer and an amazing fall.
Next, we can go to Alexander.
Okay. Woo! Thank you again to everybody for this opportunity. I had an amazing time speaking with everyone. There's several things to say, but I'll try to keep it quaint. The first thing to my fellow student leaders, and then to even the students on this call, take this time to really reach within yourselves and become a greater you than you have been. You know, I think I feel like the situation that we're in really calls for us to step up and show out and be inspiring to individuals. You know, I didn't realize the perspective everybody had until I was reading Twitter, which is kind of been one of my best ways of understanding more about how the student body is feeling, because everybody posts whatever they feel on Twitter. And I want to say that we have to remember that, you know, it's more than just getting back into the classroom and trying to have homecoming. You know, we have students who have their own individual lives, and several things are happening behind the scenes that, you know, no one's going to talk about over social media, because they'll take their pictures, but then they'll go back to their actual issues. And I think some people have, opened my eyes to kind of remind me, how we can be really inspiring to help individuals, during this time, and stay as visible as you possibly can for individuals, even though we have to be apart. There are so many people who look up to, us and what we're doing. And I think it's very important to continue to kind of shine that light for the future. This ties into my platform, Forward to the Future. And I feel like while it didn't fully have the intentions of everything that has become because of COVID-19, I think it hits even harder because the past of what, my HBCU and all our other HBCUs have been, we will never experience things on the same way that it was before. But we have the opportunity to go forward to the future and redesign and change the atmosphere of what it means to be an HBCU student, what the culture of our universities are, and how we move forward together. And I leave you all with that sentiment. Again, thank you for the opportunity.
Next, we'll go to Mary.
With all that's happening right now in our country, I can't help but to think about the words of Coretta Scott King. She says that struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You win it and earn it in every generation. And so I know right now we have a lot of things happening, and there are a lot of protests happening across the country. But I want to encourage you all to be a leader in your community in any way. If that's on campus, if that's you going back and forth with yourself, asking if you should be in the next pageant, or asking yourself if you should run for SGA in any position, then just do that. Make the world a better place. If that's you considering to run for office, do that. Make the world a better place. And I just want to leave you with that. Don't let anyone validate you, or don't let anyone tell you, wait your turn, it's not your time. Put yourself out there and you'll be surprised at the outcome.
All right, Tangela.
I just want to say that the beauty of this time period, which I think Dr. Kimbrough said something really important when he said that we can always lament, what we have lost, but we're going to drive ourselves crazy doing that. And there's going to be a point where we have to continue to look forward, and we have to, take the silver linings. So for this time period, specifically for HBCUs, what I think is really beautiful is that as we are creating these virtual forums and, this new normal, we have to really think about what is important. We have to really think about what is central to our identity as HBCUs, what knowledge, what cultural experiences that happen within our gates or on our campuses, what is important to pass on to those coming. And that's a conversation about who we are. And so, in that, there is a space for student voices in a way, in an unprecedented way. We need to be heard. We need to speak. There's a place for dissenting voices and for critique, and we critique what we love. And so I just want to, I want to encourage everyone that as we critique, first of all, because we critique what we love, let's critique in love. And regardless of what you have to say, we have to speak up, and we have to actively be a part of the conversations in ways that we haven't seen before. And that goes beyond these elected positions. That goes beyond who we would traditionally attach the term leader to. And so in this time, continue to see and begin to see how leadership applies to you and what you have to offer to the table. So yeah, that's just what I want to leave with everyone today. Thank you again for letting me be a part of this. This was awesome.
I'll just say quickly, once again, thanks for letting me participate. I really enjoyed listening to all of you and your thoughts. I have to send Alexander a note. When he said Eagle Scout, I was like, something about him. And that's when he said that, I was like, oh, that's when the vibe I'm getting from you. So I'm gonna send him a note because I want to know where he's from. I didn't hear that. And then I'm gonna, do my student leader training. I always do a session for student leaders, and I'm gonna call it Guilty Until Proven Innocent. And I'm gonna play part of what Tangela said because it was so powerful for me. I love hearing that to try to figure out how we all, work together to make all of our institutions greater. And I hope that Mr. Dortch, out of some of these, that we'll think of some creative ways to have more cross collaboration. Like I said, I think there are some possibilities of things I might not have thought before to do. So, I mean, if we have, you know, student leader exchanges where you got different panels of students who talk about their experience, for my student leaders to hear, I would love for them to hear all of you, just to get a different, you know, thought and experience about what we can do on our campus and share some things I think would be great. So I'm sitting here brainstorming as I'm listening to everyone. So this is really good. And I'm just thankful to be invited to participate, and just think all of you guys are very impressive. I knew you would be. So I'm just excited to be with you all. So thank you.
All right, Mr. Dorsey was supposed to close us out, but it's showing up that he's left the room. That's what it showed up on my screen. Can you guys see him on your screen? Or, alrighty. That was our panel for today. I guess I'll just close it out by saying that. That was our panel for today. I appreciate everybody. Oh, there he goes. For tuning in. There he goes.
So, you ready for somebody? Let me say thank you to this phenomenal panel. And for those who listen in, of course, you can get the links from our Facebook broadcast and Zoom on this panel. But I want to thank all of you for sharing your thoughts, your wisdom, and your experiences to our greater audience. I want to, of course, make sure we understand that these are our institutions. In the early 30s, there were almost 235 of them. Now we're down to about 103, 104. And who knows how many we will have still standing come the next year because of the challenges there. Student leaders, your voices have to be heard, but you must be leaders. I think it's important that as you do in your classroom and do your research, make sure you understand everything that's going on. I salute the president. I serve as a trustee for Florida A&M University and a trustee for Clark Atlanta University. Now, on our boards, we have SGA presidents who serve on the board, and it's Clark Atlanta University, the undergraduate president and the graduate president serve on our board, and every segment on our board meeting, to bring the reports and concerns from students, and they're acted on. But understand, presidents, some have boards, some have a statewide board. So as you begin to address the issues, have your voices heard, but leaders should get together. I think, you know, when I listened to what Alexander was talking about doing, and all of you, pull your leaders together on campus, have ongoing dialogue, talk about what needs to happen. Make sure you go organize with your issues and you take your issues to the board. Another group not to forget is your National Alumni Association. They play a very important role. I served 3 terms as National Alumni President for Fort Valley State University, but we always understood the importance of working with students. Yes, you can have different opinions, but of course, understand it's like your family. Do you go in the streets and talk about the problems with your family in the streets, or do you work it within, utilize all of the resources within, and let your going public be your last resort? Because the people in the public, if they cared anything about your institutions, they would have been supporting them anyway. So be leaders, speak up, speak out. And remember, the late Dr. Miles Monroe said that real leaders don't seek followers, they inspire them. We need inspirational leadership from all of you. Mary Pat knows from her time, even when her leadership as an 11-year-old to now, she calls me, I support her wholeheartedly. Because those of us as adults, we like to see leaders, and we see in us the leadership in you. And so I know when she's doing things just from her track record, I know it's about something positive. I know it's about our community and about our people. Yes, when she decided to run, yes, I wrote my check. I wanted to be the first. When she was ready to go to Spelman, I wanted to make sure she had all the money she needed because I was inspired by Mary Pat. And even today, if she calls me, I'm going to take her call. And I know if I call her, and every opportunity I can put her out front, I do that. With Tangela, I'm doing that now because we like for you to lead, and we will support you. And so you can count on me and the National Black College Alumni Hall of Fame Foundation to be there to support you. I serve also as the national chair of 100 Black Men of America. We're in Africa, England, the Caribbean islands, and over 103 chapters in the US. And we've created partnerships with HBCUs. And of course, with Dr. Walter Kimbrough, one of our great leaders that we have there. I support the presidents because all of us students, we need to understand when you see them on campus, you don't see all of the things they're challenged with. They've got to make sure the money's there to keep the doors open. They got to make sure they comply with all policies. They got to make sure they keep the accreditation for the school. And for those who have boards, they have to deal with boards, and some boards get too deep in the weeds and they have to be dealt with. So understand the shoes that your president, that he or she walks in. But I think the one thing that all of you said, communication, relationships, that's what's going to make it work. That's what makes the difference. And so with that, what I say to all of you, just know that we're here, and please make sure you continue to communicate with each other. That's going to be so critical. We used to have the National Black Student Government Association that worked where all SGA presidents and leaders would come together. We've said to Tangela, whatever you need for resources to convene leaders, count on us, because we also understand we don't need to be out front. We need to be in our place to support you whenever you need to support and to do whatever you're going to need to be successful. So with all of that, I want to thank you. I want to thank our moderator for a phenomenal job, and congratulations to what you do. And it's important for all of us. It's important that as we move, make sure that you define yourselves and don't let somebody else define you. Be relevant. And as you're being relevant, make a difference. This year again, I simply close by saying, the census is in play. We must be counted. The elections are in play, as we heard today. All politics are local. You got to get rid of these DAs who don't represent what is important in representing all the people. District attorneys, judges. You got elected officials from mayors and city council and county commissioners, and even here in Atlanta, Mary Pat and all of us have dealt with people, because you need to understand young people. There are those of your color who are not of your kind, and there are those of your kind who are not of your color. And don't think that all Black people are for you. They're some of the biggest problems we have because they get in and think they own the position. So my challenge to each of you is be the leaders, be the change agents, make a difference, keep communicating, and roll up your sleeves, because the challenges ahead for our communities, for our families, for our HBCUs are probably going to be greater than ever before. I know it's going to be greater in your lifetime, your young lifetimes. They're greater than I've seen in my lifetime, and I'm 70 years old. So understand we stand here for you. Those of us who may be elders in the village, understand we have wisdom prepared to share, but more importantly, we're prepared to support you. So thank you. Stay safe. You and your family stay safe, and use common sense, because this virus out there is no joke. Have a phenomenal life.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Keep it going, young people.